How's it going, everybody? How are you? It's your boy, Genistry, aka Matt. We are here for episode 2 of our exciting podcast known as the Snyder Report. That's me, Matt Snyder. Here to lead you in to figure out just what the hell is going on in sports. We'll give it a little bit longer. We'll get started here in about a couple minutes. Hope everybody's having a good day today. Nothing too crazy. It is Wednesday. Yep. Wednesday is when we stream our Snyder Report. So that's the only reason I know that it's Wednesday. Like I said, I'll give it like 2 minutes here. But I hope everybody's doing well. If you're in the chat, say hi so I know that you're here. It's not like an attendance thing or something. Can you imagine taking attendance like we did back in the olden days? Making sure everything is ready to go. Get over here. Let me know if you guys can hear me, by the way. If you can't hear me, that's a problem. But if you guys can hear me, let me know. I would hope so. Excuse me. All right, well, let's get started. So, today, chat, we have the Snyder Report episode 2, where we're going to talk about everything in sports. Everything you would ever want to know about sports. Biggest things we're going to talk about, as you can tell, the review of last week's predictions. There were quite a few upsets, so we're going to act like that didn't happen. No, I'm playing. We're also going to talk about the NCAA basketball season starting for men and women, but definitely focusing on the men here. Shout out to the women, though. The women have been balling out. We have the Hero World Challenge this week, which is a Tiger Woods hosted event in the Bahamas. Top 20 golfers and I think top 15 or top 17 golfers, and then 3 exemptions that he got to choose. And then, of course, we're going to have our final college football playoff predictions. But we also have to address some of the known things that have happened in the world of sports. So be ready for that. All right, let's talk. Let's talk about it. So some of the topics, like I said, we're going to review our Thanksgiving Day predictions for the NFL, also for basketball, and then, of course, football predictions that came out to be just an insane day. College football playoffs, we had, of course, rivalry, which kind of turned into a fight week. People were just fighting each other, planting flags everywhere. It was an insane thing to watch, but for media personnel, I'm sure it was just an incredible thing to witness and write about. Unless, of course, you were Michigan, which they got pepper sprayed, so that sucks. Conference championships are set, which is exciting because that means we are close to the end and we are coming into those playoffs. But the championship games are set right now. Hopefully we get some really good games out of that. And of course, we're going to end with our final college football predictions of what really comes out of this conference championship game. You know, there's a lot of players and teams that people want to see in the college football playoffs, but it's really hard because who do you kick out? Who do you keep? That just becomes one of those that you just never really know. It's hard to say, like I said, but it is what it is. You guys can hear me, right? We're good? I think so. All right. We also have NCAA men's basketball. There's been a ton of upsets, including the fact that UConn has lost 3 straight games in a row. The 2-time back-to-back champions of the NCAA basketball that went undefeated last year has lost 3 times in a row and placed dead freaking last at the Maui Invitational. So, lots going on there. Obviously, there's been more upsets than that we will get into. Illinois beating Arkansas on Thanksgiving Day, which just kind of seemed like they dominated the whole time. And then, of course, we have our first net rankings that got released as well. The Hero World Challenge, we have an update on Tiger's return timetable. He's not playing this week, and he's kind of cast a doubt over the future of his career, of his playing career at the very least. It doesn't sound like he's very optimistic, which as viewers and a lover of golf myself, that's hard to hear. So let's start with a week in review, though. Let's talk about the NFL Thanksgiving Day. So I've got a couple of notes here. Detroit narrowly escapes the Chicago Bears' second half surge. So they go into that game up 16-0 at the half, and it should have been a lot more if we're being honest with ourselves. So they go up 16-0 at the half, only to win by 3 points. They were predicted to win by well over 10 points. At one point, the spread was like 10.5. So if you think about that, I mean, the Bears overperformed in the second half. If you guys remember from last week, we talked about the fact that the Lions hadn't let a touchdown happen in like 10 quarters. They also hadn't allowed a second half score in I don't know how long. I think it said like 3 straight games, if not more. So, I mean, honestly, that's scary for teams that are facing them. And then the Bears, who have been struggling offensively this year, just come out of nowhere, almost upset them, should have upset them. I'm calling this the failure tale ending. Not the fairy tale ending, the failure tale ending for Chicago Bears fans. Because you get down, let's see here, they got down to the ball on the Detroit 41-yard line with 36 seconds left on the clock. They have 1 timeout. Caleb Williams gets sacked. They don't call the timeout. Time keeps ticking away. All of a sudden, it gets down even more to like 12 seconds, and you're like, are they going to have enough time to run another play? Caleb Williams is still trying to make a play call. He's not getting the play call, it sounded like, from his kind of view of it. So then all of a sudden, you realize they have 1 timeout. They haven't called it, and almost 25 seconds to 30 seconds has gone by, and you're like, oh my gosh, if he snaps the ball, this is like a 60-yard field goal. So if he snaps the ball, they're not going to have time to like stop this clock. What do you know? He changes up the play to make a last-second heave, overthrows DJ Moore, game over. And you're just like, how does that happen? You're at the 41 after he gets sacked. You just have a huge mismanagement of the clock by the coach, by Caleb making a mistake, but also by the coach. Like the coach, that's the head coach's job. Eberflus absolutely fucked it. And somebody should have been on the sideline, or somebody telling him, like, what are we doing? Call a timeout right now. Like, what are you doing? And it just kept slipping away. So there was just no responsibility taken. And he even came out after the game. Eberflus came out after the game saying, like, I think we did everything right. We just had a mishap. Like, that's not a mishap. That's 3 or 4 straight games that the Bears come down to a last-second, have the ball in their possession, go through everything, get your hopes all the way up, only to just shit the bed. So once again, I'm calling it an exciting game, but I'm calling it the failure tale ending of the Bears versus the Lions. Caleb Williams goes in there, Basically throws 50%. He was 20 of 39 for passing, threw for 256 yards, rushed for 39 yards, had 3 total touchdowns, 2 of them going to Keenan Allen, who had 5 receptions, 73 yards on 8 targets. DJ Moore, 8 receptions, 97 yards, 1 touchdown, 16 targets. So one thing that I'm really liking here, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, obviously Keenan Allen, a veteran presence, hasn't been as involved in the offense. 8 targets, 5 receptions, 2 touchdowns, 73 yards. Probably his best game, absolutely his best game as a Bear this season. Very consistent, very consistently been bad, unfortunately, just from the lack of targets and lack of, and he's wide receiver 3 on this team. I would say Rome Odunze has been higher than Keenan Allen. Cole Kmet has been higher than Keenan Allen in receptions and targets this year. So it's great to see Keenan Allen, obviously the old veteran, getting involved, stepping up in that game. DJ Moore, 16 targets. I love seeing DJ Moore get targeted a lot more. 8 receptions, 97 yards, 1 touchdown. That's huge because DJ Moore is your wide receiver 1. You brought him over and got him from Carolina specifically for Caleb Williams. So you need to see Caleb. I understand they only 50% of the time that he was targeted, he got the ball. The other 50% he obviously didn't. So, you obviously want to see that a little more towards the positive side. You want to see maybe like 16 targets, like 12 catches. But I am very happy to see that he still almost had 100 yards. He had a touchdown and 8 receptions. That's great. But we can't ignore the fact that the Lions, Jared Goff had a great game, 21 of 34 passing, 221 yards and 2 touchdowns himself. Of course, I think 2 of those touchdowns were Sam Laporta, so I think both of them went to him. And then you had, of course, like Gibbs, Jahmyr Gibbs, and David Montgomery, a.k.a. Sonic and Knuckles, who we talked about in the previous one. They had 228 total yards combined, 30 carries combined, and 5 receptions combined. So they absolutely dominated. They were more rushing yards on the Lions than there were passing yards, obviously. But 228 total yards together. Both of them are running back ones wherever they go. So having a 1-2 punch like that, they are the deadliest combo, in my opinion, in the NFL. So, absolutely an incredible game from them. Once again, though, failure tail ending with the Bears losing by 3 when they should have at least sent it into overtime. They may lose that overtime, but we'll never know because they never got to it, losing by 3 by not even getting a field goal from the Detroit half of the field. It's an unfortunate thing. But is there concern? That's one thing I wanted to talk about. Is there concern for Detroit here? You're up 16-0 at one point going into the half, and you actually fumbled the ball. Should have been more at halftime, but you fumbled the ball at the 2-yard line. I think Jameson Williams did, or somebody on the Lions. So you should have been up by even more at half. Then all of a sudden, the Bears come stomping down in the second half and have answers for everything you're throwing out there. So, is there concern for the Lions? It's very possible. I think their offense showed out, but their defense their secondary at least, definitely looked sketchy. Now we can talk about the Cowboys and Giants. It's what we expected as a game. I told you guys if there was any time to maybe take a walk, get some fresh air, turn off the television for some prime family time, it would have been this game. It still sucked. Even though we expected it to suck, it still underperformed our expectations. Cooper Rush, 21 of 36 passing, 195 yards, 1 touchdown. Rico Dowdle, their running back for the Cowboys, 22 carries, 112 rushing yards, and 1 touchdown. Once again, referencing last week, I told you, if the Cowboys are going to win this game, which I did have them winning that game, if the Cowboys are going to win this game, they need a running game. And they got one. Rico Dowdle, 112 yards, 1 touchdown, 22 carries. Extremely good game for him. So you want to see that being a little more consistent and maybe even working Zeke in. But I don't know what's going on with Zeke. Nobody knows what's going on with Zeke. But at least you have a bright side with Dowdle. The Cowboys really haven't had a great running game since they let Tony Pollard walk, and Tony Pollard's been balling out. So, um, yeah, definitely a failure by Jerry there. For the Giants, you had Drew Lock because Tommy DeVito had a forearm injury that he was getting a second opinion, but they just were like, nah, you're not starting. So Drew Lock steps in. He was 21 of 32 passing, 178 yards, no touchdowns, one interception, but he had 57 rushing yards. So in total, about 130 yards, 230 some yards for him, 230, 240 yards total. Definitely going through Drew Lock, but only one interception, no touchdowns. Not ideal, but it was really Drew Lock's like first football game. I don't think he's played in like an NFL football game in almost 2 years. So, Drew Lock was sitting behind Geno Smith last year, I think, last couple of years. So he really hasn't done much since I think maybe the Broncos got rid of him. So Malik Neighbors, though, 8 receptions, 69 yards, 13 targets. Love seeing him get targeted. Obviously, he's famous for saying, the rookie is famous for talking to his offensive coordinator and the media, telling him that he's not getting any kind of receptions he's not getting any targets. He should be getting more targets, and he should. He's your number one offensive weapon. You drafted him for a reason. Get him involved. He's a star wide receiver with star development. You need to get him involved. Obviously, if the defense knows it's going to him, I mean, you got to have that Mike Evans on your team. You got to have that, DJ Moore. You got to have that Chris Olave where it's like, it's going to him, or that CD Lamb. You got to have that where it's like, it's going to him, and we don't care who knows it. 13 targets, 8 receptions, 69 yards. Not a bad one. Obviously, Drew Lock, like I said, not the best performance, but pretty consistent, 21 of 32 passing. The real overall star on this game was the Cowboys defense. 2 fumbles, 1 interception, and 6 sacks. I mean, they showed out. Obviously, you can see in the bottom right here on the presentation, they're having their way on Turkey Day. Jerry's World celebrating. It's their first home win this season. I think they're like 1-4, 1-5 now at home. So the Cowboys fans can rejoice. They got to win at home. Will this turn around their season? No. They may have a couple more games where they win, but the Cowboys are not going to the playoffs. We will not be seeing them. Jerry's World will be full of concerts and other things, but it will not be filled with Cowboys fans for playoffs. Jerry Jones does not know football, and he's hiring people that are yes men instead of hiring people that tell him, shut the hell up. I know what I'm doing. You hired me for a reason. I got this. That's not here nor there. That's not what we were talking about, but I'm not a big Jerry Jones fan. He has a lot of money. He obviously has a lot of influence on the league, and he has a lot of pull everywhere else. But he's just made bad decision after bad decision as an owner and refuses to give up control. Like, he refuses to give up control to the people that he's hiring. Just imagine your manager is trying to tell you how to do your job just because, they think I'm the manager, so I know how to do your job. And it's like, well, that's not how it works. Like, you may have done a similar job, but like the programs have changed. Everything has changed. We use a different interface. We use a different program completely sometimes. So it's like, what, you're acting as if this is the 1990s, but we're not them anymore. We're 20 years ahead of that. Like, you don't know what's going on. I do. You should listen to me. Unfortunately, Jerry believes I have enough money to make you shut up. And to be honest, why not let him? If you're Dak Prescott, you're not the greatest quarterback in the league, but yet you're getting paid as like the top 3 quarterback. You've only had like 1 playoff game you've won in your entire career. I think you've only made it to like 4 postseasons. But you're getting paid more than any other quarterback in the history of the NFL outside of like 1 or 2 other players. So, I mean, I love to see a man get paid, but Jerry, you need some help. All right, moving on to the Dolphins. They freeze up at Lambeau Field. It was a cold one in Lambeau. I think game-time weather was like 28 degrees, if not colder. Obviously, like I said, weather plays a factor, especially if you're having a team like Florida teams, Miami specifically, coming out of there, playing in Lambeau Field on Thanksgiving Day. Those Green Bay people are wild. They are weirdos, man. They're shirtless on those kinds of days. I mean, if you see Pittsburgh fans and Green Bay fans, they look exactly the freaking same, just in gold and green and gold and black. They're big weirdos. So if you think you're a Miami team, a Florida team, and you're like, oh, we're from Florida. Like, there's a lot of crazy shit. You don't know what's going on up in those. They're wearing cheeses on their heads, folks. These folks wear cheese on their heads as a sign of support for their team. It's just not going to work out for you. I'm sorry to say it. But anyways, the Dolphins fall short. Obviously, the Packers are proving they're legit, ending now with a 9-3 record. Still third in their division, though, because Detroit is 11-1, Vikings 10-3. So, 10-2, 10-3. So now you have this issue of we have three very deserving teams, and if the Bears had pulled out a lot of these games that they should have won in the last 3 or 4 games, really, like, out of the 6, they're on a 6-game losing streak, the Bears are. I know we're getting a little off topic. The Bears are on a 6-game losing streak, but they had like 5 games that they could have won out of that. I mean, it's just, we could really be looking at the NFC North as like the craziest conference I've ever seen in my lifetime, because all of these teams are very legit contenders. The Bears, not so much yet, and I think they will be in the future, but like the Lions are obviously the best team in the NFL right now on both conferences. You have the Vikings, who are still showing up. Sam Darnold is really back on his bullshit. He's balling again. The Packers obviously have been very consistent about getting to the playoffs. They just can't get past the conference championship game, but maybe they'll figure that out. But anyways, the Packers 9-3, third in their division, 1 game back behind the Vikings, 2 games back behind Detroit. Play Detroit next week. This week, tomorrow. Today's Wednesday. So they play Thursday Night Football tomorrow. This could very well be a tiebreaker for the Packers, as they lost their first game against the Lions and their first game against the Vikings. So they're 0-2 against the top 2 teams right now in their division. So in order to really secure your spot and really start making a case of we can hang, we're legit, they need to beat Detroit tomorrow, and they need to get that score point differential up pretty large. Let's see here. Sorry, I got a notification. Let me pull this back up. Anyways, for this game specifically, though, against Miami, Tua, 37 of 46 passing. They threw the ball 46 times. They were not running. They didn't give a shit about running, which is insane. Anyways, 37 of 46 passing, 46 times throwing the ball, 365 yards, 2 touchdowns, 10 receivers on his teams with at least 1 catch. 10 receivers on the Dolphins caught a ball. That is an insane amount of players. 4 of them, 4 wide receivers, had over 50 yards. That is an insane stat line. They have a really good running back with A-Chain, and I think Raheem Mostert is injured right now, but A-Chan, 7 carries, 14 rushing yards, so not good at all, but he had 8 receptions, so he was one of those people with a catch, and he was one of those people, one of those 4 wide receivers with over 50 yards, 8 receptions, 56 yards, and a rushing touchdown. So although the running game wasn't there, and I know they got blown out, the Dolphins still, their offense was rolling. I don't think the offense was the issue. Then you have on the other side, obviously, you also had, I think, the rookie Juno Smith, 10 receptions, 113 yards, 11 targets, but he did fumble the ball for the Dolphins. That is an insane stat line for him to have 11 targets, first of all, 10 receptions. So that's very, very good hands, 113 yards. So you probably have maybe Xavier McKinney over top of him, and you have Jair Alexander on Tyreek Hill, but like I mean that second cornerback or whoever was marking him and was targeting Juno Smith. I mean they got burned. 10 receptions, 113 yards, 1 fumble. Tyreek Hill only 6 receptions, did get a touchdown late in the game off of that bobble pass that he caught and laid down. 83 yards though on 6 catches. I mean is not bad. I mean he once again chat he is an extremely fast player. He's dangerous. He gets in the open field. So definitely something to keep an eye on. He had 9 targets, so it's good to see him and Tua starting to kind of get back on the level they were before Tua got hurt for like the third time. Tyreek Hill, definitely going to be somebody to watch, hopefully going forward. You can only hope. He's a very exciting player to watch, especially when he's on his game. So Jordan Love, 21 of 28 passing, 274 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Love that no interceptions. We talked about Jordan Love turning the ball over a shit ton this year. Obviously, second going into this week, tied for like second or third most interceptions in the league. That's not somewhere you want to be. That's not the record you want to be holding. So no interceptions, 2 touchdowns, 21 of 28 passing, 274 total yards. Pretty great to see from Jordan Love. Josh Jacobs, 19 carries, 43 rushing yards. Not the greatest on the ground, but he did have a touchdown, and he did have 4 catches with 74 yards, so 117 total yards. So Josh Jacobs showing that if I can't get it going on the run game, I'm going to get involved in the passing game, which is pretty awesome because you need to have somebody like a star like Josh Jacobs playing in being a factor in the game. If they have to target him and and they have to start looking out for him in the passing game, that opens up routes for everyone else. It opens up routes for Romeo Dobbs, Christian, Watson getting up there. So Josh Jacobs figuring out a way to contribute. Like I said, 1 touchdown, 4 receptions, 74 yards catching, 19 carries, 43 yards rushing, 117 total. You love to see that from him. Tucker Kraft, also a great day, 7 targets. Love to see Jordan Love following in his role model / mentor's footsteps, Aaron Rodgers. 7 targets to his tight end, 6 receptions, 78 yards. Not his best game this year, definitely his most consistent. Jaden Reed, only 3 receptions and 24 yards, but had those 2 touchdowns from Jordan Love. So capitalizing, getting into the red zone, and then capitalizing when you're down there is very important, something that the Packers have not done so well this year and previous years. Hopefully, now we have an answer, and they're turning the corner. Overall, Miami now second in their division at the AFC East at 5-7 with this loss. But problem being, Buffalo Bills clinched earlier this week. Buffalo Bills won their game this last weekend, so they have clinched their division. So Miami's playoff hopes basically come down to like 10%, if not less. I don't think they can make it, actually. So Packers, like I said, third in their division in the NFC North, 9-3 now. 1 game back of the Vikings, 2 games back of the Lions, who they play this week tomorrow for the Thursday night football game. I mean, if you ever needed a better reason to watch football, it would be this game, hopefully tomorrow. Green Bay versus the Lions, a division rivalry game. We finally have the Lions being the team that everybody kind of wanted them to be for so long. Who's not a Dan Campbell fan? Their head coach is awesome. I mean, it'll be an interesting game. I think it'll be a high-scoring, interesting game. Obviously, like I said, for the Packers, it's a must-win against the Lions because they already lost their first game against the Lions and first game against the Vikings. So they need to win this game against the Lions this week, and then Week 17 they play the Vikings. They'll need to win that one in order to really secure their spot and maybe take the division. It's up in the air, but they also need a little help from both the Lions and the Vikings. Let's move on here. Let's go ahead and talk about how the playoff picture has changed for college football rivalry week. I did tell you guys that my predictions, which, we'll discuss that, what looked like before, now how it looks afterwards, the conference championship week this week, and we also have teams planting flags leading to fights. Obviously, we had the Michigan players versus Ohio State, which has been kind of everywhere, the videos surfacing multiple angles showing that, unfortunately, there was pepper spraying going on, as you can see in the top right. They get in a scuffle. I know the NCAA said that they were leading an investigative probe to see what happened and why pepper spray needed to be used, but there were multiple reports from multiple people, multiple sources saying that coaches were getting knocked out, cops were getting trampled on. So it sounds like an even worse situation than it really was. And to be honest, the fact that these guys, both teams, only got fined $100,000 for their actions, I don't know, seems very much like I mean, there's players on their team that make millions of dollars. So only fining both programs $100,000, no sanctions, no problems. Like, they're gonna brush that off. They make $100,000 in like a day, more, honestly. So that's like pocket change to them. But anyways, we'll talk more about the college football playoffs and everything and their repercussions there. We have the men's basketball, NCAA men's basketball. We're having some madness before March. As I said, lots of upsets. UConn dropping 3 straight, placing last in the Maui Invitational. Illinois beats Arkansas on Turkey Day. The battle between the Ivasic brothers. Illinois comes out on top. And then Chris Holtmann, we're going to talk about where I'm currently at school, DePaul University. Chris Holtmann, the former Ohio State standout coach, has come into DePaul and taken their team, who was dead last or close to dead last year with a 10-23 record last year. Now has come out to a hot start, 7-0 this year to start their season. They have a really true road test against Texas Tech today at 8:15 on ESPNU. I might be tuning into that, to be honest. But the Holtmann era begins. They are eyeing a return to the NCAA tournament. That would be their first tournament for DePaul in 20 years. And now would be the time to capitalize. Now, I'm not saying they're on UConn's level. Probably not. We'll see what happens throughout the year. They're obviously both in the Big East. But the UConn dropping 3 straight games, and I think 2 of them to unranked teams, not a good look. It could mean that, depending on what happens throughout the conference, obviously, DePaul being 7-0 right now, not really playing anybody, plays Texas Tech tonight. We'll see what happens, but it could make for an interesting shakeup with the Big East. Who knows what could happen if UConn is dropping games. On top of that, I want to talk a little bit more about DePaul. Sorry about that. I want to talk a little bit more about DePaul. Shout out to my university, DePaul. New facility planned in Lincoln Park. They got a large donation of like $40 million, with $2.5 million dedicated to a new facility, basketball facility. All planned in Lincoln Park. Just got passed through, I think. Got the approval and everything from the neighborhood. So it'll be interesting. But it does show, once again, Holtmann's impact on DePaul men's basketball, bringing in more money, bringing in donations. Means a lot when it comes to NIL, means a lot when it comes to staying up to date and fighting against these Division I teams. Because, even though DePaul is a private school in a city in Chicago, it still doesn't mean that they get an excuse when they have to go and play blue bloods like Duke, North Carolina, because that's who you're going to play in the tournament, right? Or even in your own conference, you have UConn, you have Creighton. Like, you got these people that are really known for their basketball programs. And, I mean, if you want to compete, even Holtmann said, if you want to compete nowadays, you need to be able to capitalize, and you got to have the money. It's a business. That's what it comes down to. So, with that being said, let's move on to the next slide here. Let's talk about the college football playoffs, all right? It's what everybody wants to talk about, including me. Not going to lie to you. So, these were my predictions for the college football playoffs before rivalry week. Obviously, I had Ohio State, Texas, Oregon, and Miami and Georgia filling out the top 5. Penn State, Notre Dame, Boise State, Tennessee, Indiana, Alabama, and SMU. Playoffs, I had Ohio State, Texas, Miami, Florida, Boise State, Oregon, Penn State, Notre Dame, Georgia, Tennessee, SMU, Indiana, BYU. Obviously, there have been a ton of upsets, and a ton of things have changed since that came out. So these were my predictions before. We had a ton of changes going on because of smaller games, even outside of these 12 teams, impacts the future college football playoffs because you have teams that were vying for a spot that looked legit, that looked like they could steal something, from these other teams that could sneak in if they win their conference championship. Could basically put the committee into a weird spot where they basically say, like, how can we deny them a spot in there? And you kick out a team like Alabama, who has been struggling to find their way in. They obviously are not in the SEC championship game. It's Georgia versus Texas. So both teams are going to be in the playoffs, but Alabama is kind of like, oh, we're on the fence. So obviously, some of that comes up with Memphis beating Tulane. Tulane was number 17, vying for a spot. Once again, vying for a spot in the college football playoffs, really hoping that they could find a way in. But if you lose to Memphis, who was unranked, I mean, that takes you out of the playoffs. So big thing there. Georgia Tech, obviously, I think that's called the Egg Bowl. They went to 8 overtimes. Georgia Tech was up 17-0 at half, 17-6 going into the fourth quarter. So all they had to do was hold on to a 2-score lead. Couldn't do it. Went all the way to 8 overtimes. Eventually, Georgia comes out. But that could have been Georgia getting the boot out of the SEC championship game and getting the boot out of the playoffs. That's how important these last couple of weeks have been. Michigan wins the game, takes Ohio State out of the Big Ten championship game, puts in Penn State to the Big Ten championship game against Oregon this week, as Penn State blew out Maryland at home for their final home game. So big thing, though, with the Michigan-Ohio State game, like I said, was the fight that broke out after Michigan goes to plant the flag on Ohio State's field. Ohio State comes out of left field and just bodies them. And then you have pepper spray that gets used. Once again, only fined $100,000 by the NCAA. Both teams were. So I don't know. To me, I'm not saying that like fights should happen. I'm not saying like I condone the violence or the idea behind it. But like I do think, like planting a flag obviously on your opponent's field, especially during a rivalry, something as big as Michigan versus Ohio State, is going to create problems. But where's the security measures? Where's everything? Because that if it were the other way around, Ohio State would be planting the flag. And that's just what happens when you have a high-stakes game, especially because Michigan is looking to not be in the playoffs. I don't even know if they're going to make a bowl. I don't know if they're bowl eligible actually this year, but they're obviously on a very big high as they beat Ohio State, took them out of the Big Ten championship game, and possibly put them in a really tough place. Probably took away one of their bye weeks because I think the top 4 spots in the college football playoffs, like if you're 1 through 4, who are the conference champions, you get an automatic bye. You don't have to play in 1 week. So, I mean, that could really have messed up. It really messed up Ohio State's year, in all honesty. And when you have somebody from Michigan, I'm sure they're very happy to hear that they fucked up Ohio State's year. Penn State versus Oregon for the Big Ten championship obviously has college football playoff implications this week. I mean, that's just how it goes. Oh, conference championship games. Let's talk about it. Okay. Conference championship games. We've got Georgia versus Texas for the SEC championship. We've got Oregon versus Penn State for the Big Ten championship. Arizona State, Iowa State for the Big 12. SMU versus Clemson for the ACC. So for the Mountain West, we also have number 11 Boise State versus number 22 UNLV. Number 11 Boise State, obviously looking to become one of those 1 through 4 to get that automatic bye. Heisman Trophy contender, Ashawn Genty is on that team. It'll be interesting to see him play against some of these bigger teams and Power 5 conference teams. So, but we don't know because UNLV could put themselves as an automatic bid. Once again, by winning this game, you put the committee in a weird spot. You could say, hey, I don't really know if Boise State, I think they belong, whether they win or lose, but like I don't know if Boise State is looking to they're hoping for that bye week. Everybody's hoping for that bye week. So big implications there. You have the Big 12 versus for the Big 12, you have Iowa State versus Arizona State, number 18 versus number 16. Once again, this is a big game because this has college football playoff implications. Whoever wins this is going to get a bye. That's just how it goes. So we could be looking at Arizona State forcing their way into the playoffs or Iowa State forcing their way into the playoffs. Maybe they don't get a bye. I misspoke there. Maybe they don't get a bye, but at least they make their way into the playoffs. SEC, Georgia versus Texas. Both teams are going to the championship, the SEC championship, but both teams are also going to the playoffs this year. We really could be looking at an SEC final championship game anyway. This is very possible that Georgia versus Texas is looking ahead to be like the championship game overall. So be on the lookout for that. Oregon versus Penn State, another one that could be a possibility for the future final game of the year. Number 1 Oregon, undefeated this year so far. Number 4 Penn State sneaking in there after blowing out Maryland, and Michigan upsetting Ohio State. So big implications there. For the ACC championship, Clemson and SMU. SMU, in my mind, has kind of shored up their spot in the playoffs, but you really want to see them shore it up and maybe get a bye, actually, this week by winning that game. Clemson looking to upset SMU, possibly steal a spot in the college football playoffs, but also possibly a bye. So big things there. Obviously, Clemson makes it into the ACC championship after Syracuse goes and beats Miami, Florida, who was the number 6 team overall, now finds themselves out of the ACC championship game. Have to watch from home and kind of have to hope and pray that they can make it into the playoffs, because if Clemson beats SMU, Clemson can claim, hey, we not only won the ACC championship, but we beat SMU, who's already in the playoffs. Miami, Florida does not have that. But Miami, Florida is kind of hoping probably for a mix-up here with SMU winning that game and hoping Clemson kind of falls back. Another one is South Carolina has a showdown with they win last week. They actually beat Clemson last week. So they're obviously putting in a bid for their college football playoffs. They're hoping that going forward they can get a spot. They're obviously have an impressive resume. They played close with Alabama, losing 27-25 earlier this year, losing to LSU 36-33, and have big wins against A&M, Missouri, and Clemson. Once again, Clemson in the ACC championship game, hoping to kind of secure their spot into the playoffs. Sorry, let me go back. Arizona State versus Iowa State is a big one for the Big 12 championship. BYU, who I thought was going to make it in, comes up short in the Big 12. This is their first year in the Big 12, so it's unfortunate to see them come up short, but BYU comes up short, and in my mind, they're out of the college football playoffs now. If you come up short and you're not in your championship game, really hard to make a point for you to go to the playoffs. If you can't beat, and you can't even beat the people in your conference, how are you going to beat people in other conferences? So whoever wins this ASU, Arizona State versus Iowa State game, we're really looking at a very big possibility of you're going to the playoffs, you're going to a regular bowl game. So once again, here are my new predictions for the playoffs after conference championship week. So this is what I think is going to look like and what I think everything's going to kind of turn out to be for the final prediction after the conference championship comes out. So at number 1, I think Oregon beats Penn State. Oregon stays number 1. Ranked 2nd, Texas. I think ranked 3rd is Notre Dame. Ranked 4th is Georgia. I think ranked 5th is Penn State. Ranked 6th, SMU, as I have SMU beating Clemson, and I actually have Texas beating Georgia, but I still think Georgia has the spot to be able to say, hey, look at us. Like, we went to the championship. It's very possible. And I also could see Georgia winning that game, putting themselves even higher, and putting Texas, once again, I don't think Texas can really drop. I think Texas maybe stays in that top 5, but how can you remove Texas from the top 5? I'll be honest. They're just too dominant. You have Boise State, and at 7th, I think they win this week against UNLV, eliminating UNLV's miracle hopes for the championship. for the playoffs. Ohio State coming in at 8th, obviously sitting at home, worrying at home, trying to figure out where they're going to be playing, but they'll be in the playoffs. Indiana, another one, watching from home, but knows they'll be in the playoffs most likely, as they're only like 10-1 or like 11 or 12-1. I don't know. I think 11-1. So Tennessee, another one, watching from home this week, but had secured their spot in the playoffs, to my knowledge. Arizona State and Alabama filling in at the 12th spot. For the playoffs, looks very similar, but once again, the top 4 have to be conference champions, and they need 5 conferences overall to represent. So, number 1, we have Oregon, Texas, SMU, obviously for them being the conference champions. I think they beat Clemson. We're going to see them at number 3. I have Boise State winning their championship game against UNLV. I think they get the automatic bye, which is really cool, being number 4. Notre Dame, I understand they're not really playing any games. They're obviously one of the few schools left in the NCAA that are an independent. But I think that's why I have them as a 5th spot, because they can't do any wrong, they can't do any good. And they already had secured themselves pretty highly. So Georgia coming in at number 6. I have Penn State, the 7th seed, Ohio State, the 8th seed, Tennessee, the 9th seed, Arizona State. I had Arizona State beating Iowa State. So Arizona State coming in at 10th, Indiana at 11th, and I think Miami, Florida sneaks in by a hair. I think they barely get in, and they somehow find a way to let everyone know that they're legit. It'll be interesting. Once again, I don't think that is a problem for them. We'll see what happens, but I think that's the thing. Sorry, I'm getting rid of this guy. Sorry, chat. And banning. We do not accept your spam in here. Thank you. But anyways, like I said, I think Miami, Florida somehow sneaks in with a hair. Now, a lot of people are saying Alabama is going to sneak in, and it's very possible. I mean, Alabama has not, beat Auburn in the Iron Bowl this last week, and they obviously were kind of vying up their spot in the playoffs earlier, but they have dropped a couple of crucial games. They have 3 losses. I think Miami has 2 or 3 losses, so I think it's a toss-up. But I think the other 10 to 11 teams kind of are for sure. I think that 12 spot is the only one that's really up for toss-up at this point. We'll talk about the Hero World Challenge. Obviously, Tiger Woods is not competing. He is recovering from back surgery that he just had this September. He does say he's not tournament sharp yet. He's eyeing future starts, though, once he feels he's ready to compete. These are his words that he's saying. So he doesn't feel that he's ready to compete against the players, against the top level players. Now, he could go on the senior tour. A lot of people have been telling him that for years. He could go and do whatever he wants. He's Tiger freaking Woods. He can play wherever. He can do whatever he wants. Obviously, Charlie, his son, is a sophomore or junior in high school. So he's been focusing a lot on playing with him. He's eyeing a future PNC championship, which he has done the last 2 or 3 years with his son. So it'll be interesting to see if he plays in that, but he is not playing in this for competitive reasons. He does say the fire still burns to compete, but body doesn't just recover like it used to. The body just won't recover. We all get that as athletes, as a former athlete myself, but also I think everybody can just relate to that. When you get older, Tiger's like 48, 49. When you get older, you start really feeling it. And it's tough. It's tough to keep up with how you were in your 20s, how you were in your teens. And Tiger's been doing this his entire life. So he's not really had a day off or time off except for injuries, unfortunately. Your key pairings you have for the Hero World Challenge, really the last couple of pairings, the second half of the tournament to me looks really interesting. Jason Day and Ludwig Oberg at 10:52. Patrick Cantlay and Wyndham Clark playing at 11:03. Scotty Scheffler and Sahith Theegala at 11:14. And Keegan Bradley and Justin Thomas, who I think were both exemptions this year. At least Justin Thomas was an exemption from Tiger. Got the nod to come to the Bahamas. They're ending the day at 11:25, or ending the start of rounds at 11:25. So it'll be an interesting thing. I'm looking forward to actually watching this tomorrow. It's been a while since I've been able to like sit down and really watch a golf tournament, and I'm just obsessed with golf. If there's one thing I want you guys to know, I'm obsessed with golf. So if you ever have anything golf, I'm in. I'll talk about it. I'm all about it. Tiger also commented on the PIF deal with the PGA. They're trying to figure things out. He's hopeful, but there's just no real details. Everybody's been kind of tight-lipped about it. I think it's kind of one of those things where it's like, if you're not involved, you don't really know what's going on, and I don't really know if it's the priority right now, but we'll see what happens. Now let's talk about the news everybody wants to talk about. Eberflus being fired, which is an early holiday gift for Chicago Bears fans. He was fired after 2.5 seasons as the Bears head coach. This is their first ever time in franchise history the Bears have ever fired a head coach mid-season. They've never done anything like that, despite a lot of people asking for former head coaches' heads in the middle of the season. This is the first time they pulled the plug on a head coach in the middle of a season. So, big deal there. His record overall while he was the head coach of the Bears was 14-32, which is a 30.4% win percentage. That is not good. That's less than 1 in 3 games that you're winning. 0 playoff appearances. Big donut there. Ends on a 6-game losing streak as the Bears head coach, obviously with the, like I said, the failure tail ending, which is what I nicknamed the Lions versus Bears game last week. And obviously the last couple of games have just been complete and utter coaching failures. Not just playing failures, coaching failures. And then he was fired. He fired 8 coaches. So 8 different, like including Shane Waldron, the offensive coordinator, obviously was one of his most recent ones, but he has fired 8 coaches in his 2.5 seasons. There's been no consistency for a long time in Chicago about your staff. It's really hard to have a winning program and develop a franchise quarterback if you don't have consistent people there coaching them. So obviously, I think that's something the Bears are looking at going forward. Thomas Brown, the former wide receiver coach and offensive coordinator for both the Bears and the Panthers last year. Thomas Brown made his way onto the Bears coaching staff and has now been promoted twice this year, all the way up to interim head coach, which the players seem very excited about. I'm very excited about it as a football fan in general. We'll see what Thomas Brown has done, but the offense has certainly picked it up in his new position as like offensive coordinator. So it'll be interesting to see if that keeps up, because obviously, I mean, they almost upset the Lions on Thanksgiving. They put themselves in winning scenarios going into the game, or at least in like to end the game. Now it's just about executing and finishing the plan. Ryan Poles is going to lead the hiring of the new head coach, as you would expect. He's been very vocal about being involved and very vocal about saying this is going to be the most coveted job in the NFL. And I agree with him. New rookie franchise quarterback in Caleb Williams, who's showing star potential. DJ Moore shored up in a contract. Keenan Allen is going to be a free agent, but they're probably going to bring him back, hopefully. Rome Odunze on a rookie contract. You have really good defensive players, Jalen Johnson, Brisker. You got a lot of players in here to work with that really could be something big. All they need is a head coach to lead them and to develop them and put them on the right path. So obviously we had to talk about it as we're in Chicago. You can't just ignore the fact that this is the first time the Chicago Bears franchise in over 100 plus years of being established has ever fired a head coach. No matter how bad they were doing, they've never fired a head coach midseason, and they just did it for the first time this last week. So, big deal there. Let's talk about what's coming up next. Episode 3, we're going to talk about college football. It's bowling season. The college football picture will be clear as conference championship games would have concluded by then. We'll see if there were any surprises, as I shared with you guys what, that's going to look like for me, what I kind of predicted was going to happen out of these conference championship games. We'll see who maybe sneaks in, who's going to be that 12 seed in that college football playoff picture. The NFL, Week 15, we're going to have the road to the playoffs. We'll obviously probably take a look at the Lions-Packers game for Thursday Night Football. I'm not really sure of the next football games, but we'll certainly look back and look forward as the road to the playoffs for the NFL starts becoming a lot more clear. NCAA basketball, we have conference play starting. Illinois plays Northwestern. I know there's the SEC ACC challenge going on as well, so we'll probably talk about that. The Bulls have opened up their eyes and they're open for business, so they're hoping to trade away. They basically put everybody on their team up for trade, up for sale. They're basically saying we're cleaning house, and we're done being the middle of the pack. We're either going to be really bad and develop into really good, or we're going to be really good right now. But they are tired of being in the middle. Can't say that it's great to see that, but at the same time, it's very understandable. And it's exciting because you can't be the middle of the pack in the NBA or really any sport nowadays in a professional sport, because you're just not getting like the top overall picks to develop, like a Victor Wembanyama or something, or a Giannis Antetokounmpo or something like that. You're not able to develop those kind of players when you're like, they're not going to fall to 15. Luka Doncic obviously fell to like number 3, but you're not going to get the top players when you're doing that. So I understand they also have massive contracts with like Zach LaVine and I think Vucevic, and Patrick Williams also not playing well, has been averaging like under 10 rebounds to under 10 points, and he got a huge contract signing last year for some reason, like last year or 2 years ago. So I'm glad to see they're opening up trades. I hope they don't get rid of a couple of guys that I'm really key on and that I really think could be big for the Bulls. So it'll be interesting. The Blackhawks are still figuring out how to win. Unfortunately, they keep dropping games. They get out to an early lead, but hopefully they're not wasting Bedard. I don't think they are. I think they're probably another couple of years from being back to that Stanley Cup championship level. But right now they're just figuring out how to win. Anyways, follow me on social media, same as last week, MKSnyder13 on Instagram. Reach out to me. Let me know what you think of the podcast here in the chat, or maybe reach out to me personally. My Discord is on here as well, which you can find on my Twitch channel. Genistry on YouTube and Twitch. That's how you can find me here, or you can watch the stream back on YouTube. I post it there usually later in the day. So make sure you check both of those things out. Gives you a little more of a clear version. That way you can kind of key in on certain ideas or certain things that I might have said that you may want to comment or comment on. But Genistry on Twitch here. Turn on notification. Make sure you guys have notifications turned on for both YouTube, Twitch, anything like that, as I like to try and stay up to date with you guys. I like doing this. This was episode 2. I'm trying to do this every Wednesday at noon. Going forward right now until at least classes start, as I think I probably do have class on Wednesday at 12 o'clock when classes start back up for the winter quarter. But as of right now, I'm doing these at winter 12 p.m. So thank you so much for those that tuned in or was watching afterwards. Once again, my name is Matt, a.k.a. Genistry, and it's been a pleasure reporting the news to you from the Snyder Report. Have a good one, guys. Love seeing you. Peace and love. Bye.